Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And you probably might wonder, what is Steve up to now? Well, this video is not going to be about race cars or rebuilding cars. This is another video back on the tower room, and you might remember some time ago we started to renovate the tower room, and in this video I'm going to show you all the work that has been done and where we are right now, because it is nearing its completion. And so far I have finished the walls and I've given them the first coat of paint. And as you will see, the room is painted in two colors. One wall is what I call robin, and this is the wall with the chimney facing the windows. We have worked in the two new window frames with the new double glazing. These window frames are fairly high. They are about 2.40 meters high. And if you compare me to that window frame, you will exactly see what I mean with that, how high that is. So that was quite a bit of work. We also have finished up the ceiling, and you'll see that in a few seconds. And the floor is kind of cleaned up and restored. Still need to do the joints, but that's something for later. And we have completely plastered in the window frames into the walls. Now the walls are about 1 meter thick, so that's fairly thick. I know I still have some tape on the window frames that has to be removed, but remember, this is the first coat of paint, so I need to paint it for a second time. So I'm going to leave that masking tape on the windows for now until I've done the second coat of paint. I think the floor by itself is now coming out very nice. It's a very old floor going back to 1616. It's made out of clay tiles and it has a pattern on it. And if you look carefully, you will see that pattern. It's a pattern of reddish and black clay tiles, and the black ones are kind of in a pattern, as you can see, and it repeats itself throughout the floor. Now the complete floor isn't finished yet. I still have to take care of the joints in between the tiles. So folks, now let's go back in time and see what the state was of the tower room about 2 years ago and how we got to this final result. And just in case you would be interested in seeing all the individual videos on the restoration work on the tower room, then feel free to surf my channel and you will find the restoration of the tower room in about 10 or 15 episodes. So when I started to work on the tower room, there was no staircase. So we have to get into the tower room with some ladders, and it's pretty high up. And as you could see, that room was really in a bad state. The floor was scattered, the ceiling was bad, the windows were bad, everything was bad. Now getting to the attic was not that easy because there was no access to it, so I had to cut a little hole in that false ceiling to get there. And once I was on the attic, I could see the old oak structure where the pier was on the roof before, and I could see the actual old ceiling. And here I'm just knocking down this false ceiling to see what it is. But I decided before I would work on the ceiling first to fix the floor. So here you can see that the floor is actually lifted up because of this metal bar. And that is because the dirt underneath the tiles has settled over the time and it lowered down. But the bar stayed in place, so it lifted up those tiles. So that's the first thing I really had to fix. Now that was not the only thing. I also had some holes in the walls that I had to fill up with new bricks. And all the plaster on the walls, well, that was really nasty stuff with a horse here inside and some of the straw pieces. So the first thing now was to start cleaning up a little bit so I had space to work. And really, there was a lot of debris out there. So here I'm actually preparing that wall with new bricks. So I'm just cutting out some sides so I could nest in the new bricks. And preparing the mortar here, and then I'm doing some bricklaying and making sure that the new bricks fit nicely into the wall. And here that hole is actually filled up and fixed. Now lowering down all that debris, that was one hell of a job since I had no lift or anything. So later on I decided to build myself a slide to do this. I threw out all the dirt through the window onto the JCV. Now here I'm actually cleaning up those tiles before I'm putting it back, but the bad thing is I didn't have enough of them. I broke some, so I had to create some new tiles. And here on the left you see the pile of the old tiles, but this is the pile of the new tiles that I had to cut to size. So now the first thing was get that bar lowered. So I was removing some bricks underneath the bar, knocked it down, and then I cut it in two and welded it up to the other bar, and I even installed the brace up between the two. So that allowed me now to place back all those tiles. Now there are more tiles than just in that area, but I think underneath the bar this turned out to be quite all right. And here I'm just putting a piece of a wig in between the anchor of that metal bar. In other areas, I just had to take the tiles out as well and then replace them where I could. And there were quite some places on that floor to do so. So, as I said, bringing down all this debris, especially from that ceiling that I'm about to remove, is tough. So I decided to make myself a slide so I could slide down all these parts. Now, before I was about to remove that old fake ceiling, I installed the scaffold and I protected the floor to some extent. And removing that old ceiling, well, that was one hell of a job. It was so much debris, so much dust, but little bit by little bit, the old ceiling started to show. And here you see the old ceiling and some of the leftovers from that fake ceiling still sitting there. But you can see the big beams that we have there. And those are really nice oak beams, and those are the ones that we go into the cover and then sandblast and make it all looking fine. But on that attic, I had so much debris and so much wood, little pieces and branches from blackbirds. So I had about 10 bags, so I had to burn it all. And while I was cleaning it up, I found some very old nails stuck in the dirt and in the debris. And here you actually see the mother beams and the child beams that we will go into the cover. Now, to install a new floor on that attic, I decided to build my own planks. So I went to a sawmill and collected a big pile of oak planks that I would then need to prepare. And these planks, I'm going to make them in a way that they overlap because I can't use teeth and tongue as they say, because or teeth and groove or tongue and groove, because the ceiling is not 100% horizontal. And here you see me preparing these planks. I'm putting them to the planer for thickness, and here I'm cutting out these corners. And I'm doing this on opposite sides so they can actually overlap with each other. That took me about a complete day to have all this done, but at the end, this turned out to be quite all right. Now here I'm installing or replacing some old oak child beams with new beams because not all of them were still in a good condition. So that was pretty hard labor because these beams are 2 meters 50 long and yeah, pretty heavy. But at the end, it it all went in fairly easy, I have to say. I took my time and yeah, I did some precision work and I was quite happy with the end result. And those beams were just fitting perfectly into that mother beam. Now, overall, that mother beam was a little bit deteriorated, I would say, or I thought it was. So I decided to install an additional cross support beam on top of the attic by using some pretty big Douglas pieces of wood with metal bars to support that. So it's a pretty heavy beam, so doing it in one piece was impossible, and assembling it upstairs in the attic was also very difficult to do. So I decided to build it completely downstairs, as you can see here, and then label it all up and mark it, and then drag it to the attic. This was for me about the best approach, and here you see on how I'm putting those 12 M12 rods through those beams to hold them together and the marking as such. So once I've got these beams sorted out downstairs, I drag them up to the attic and I reassemble them. Now doing this on the attic wasn't all that easy because I had no floor yet. I had to stand on some OSB panels. But as I prepared the beams downstairs, things assembled fairly quickly. Now, once they were kind of lined out and in place, I drilled some additional holes into them, and then it was just a matter of bolting them down. And here you see me connecting those rods where the cross beam would connect to the old oak beam. But to be very honest, at the end, it turned out that this old oak beam was still rock solid and there was really no need for it. But that is me. I'd rather be safe than sorry. And then it was time to remove the old rafting from the fake ceiling. And that caused a lot of debris, and there was a zillion amount of nails to be pulled out. But at the end, it came out nice, and I was able to shot blast that whole ceiling. And then it was time to actually install the planks that we prepared. Now, in most places, I have nailed them down. In some places, I had to bolt them down just because the ceiling was so uneven. And then we just leveled them all out and we cut out the edges. And that was the final result. And I don't really mind to see those brackets there because, yeah, it's an old house. So now it was time to really get at these old window frames out. Now, a couple of years ago, I had already rebuilt brand new windows to go in the tower room. They must have been sitting there for about 5 years or so, or maybe even longer than that. And yeah, now it was time to get them a base coat before I drag them upstairs because it's so much easier to paint downstairs than upstairs when the frames are in the window opening. And lucky for me, I got some additional containers coming in because there is going to be a lot more debris. And here you see these old window frames, and there was a plastic shield on it to protect the building from the rain for a couple of years because most of these old window frames were in such a bad shape and glass was missing. And I didn't bother putting a new glass in. Now, removing the glass from those old frames is a tedious job to do, and I'm using a suction tool for that, which in most cases works pretty well. Now, in some cases, it didn't go that well, so I had to knock out some parts and then I could take out the frame. Now, the glass on the top, that was a different story. I was standing there at about 10 meters height, and which is very high, and I wasn't too keen to take them up from the outside. And you can see here how much debris is falling down when I'm trying to get all these things out. And I've been cutting that frame in multiple parts, so it makes it easier. And I was so happy when this was really all completed. Here I'm putting the scaffold up because I had to prepare the sides of the walls before the windows go in. So I do new pointing, and you can see here that is the wall that has been repaired. And I've done this on all four walls. And these kind of things that take a lot of time, but if you take your time and you're a little bit precise, you can get pretty good results, even though the wall may have looked really bad. Here I'm actually jacking up the window frame, and these frames are about 80 kilograms. Now I'm a pretty old guy, and it's not that easy to lift 80 kilograms up through a place like this. Now, once they were on the attic, I decided to give them the final coat of paint on the outside. So the lac went on. I let it dry, and then through the scaffold that I reinstalled, I was able to tilt it and lift it and actually position that frame into the opening. Now, that was a bit scary because you stand there, you cannot fall through, but still, it was scary for me because, you have to lift this thing, and yeah, it wasn't easy. So here I'm just leveling those window frames, and because I want to have them absolutely level, and I'm locking them in place actually with this glue foam. On the top of the window frame, I had actually an opening, so that's why you saw me making that bar. And this is a shot of the windows from the outside of the tower room. And here I'm trial fitting that little piece of wood. Now, once the window frames were kind of done, I decided to start working on the walls. And I measured the humidity on all the walls to decide what I was going to do. So the wall with the chimney, that is the original wall. The wall with the window frames, that's going to be a wall which is partially original and partially drywall.
And the two side walls, on those I'm going to install a drywall. And I'm using metal studs, as you can see, and they are some distance away from the wall actually, so the old wall will be able to breathe. I don't like to put things against old walls just to cover up things. That is very bad practice. I'm always installing the studs with these special pliers, and halfway the studs I'm actually locking them down to the wall. And yeah, you might say, Steve, you're crazy about all your glue foam, but it's really great stuff. The studs, they're all placed now at the distance of 60 centimeters. And the reason for that is that my drywall panels are going to be panels of 40 millimeters thick and 60 centimeters wide, because I'm on my own, and lifting up a 1 meter 20 14 millimeter drywall panel is a bit too difficult for me on my own. So here I'm preparing the top part of the drywall, and before I can join those together, you will see me cutting in a V groove into that, because that's going to be necessary. And that's the top part, uh, which is still open there, that we're going to fill in. But as you can see, work was progressing fairly well. And I do like to use tools, as you see. That screwing gun or drywall screwing gun is very handy. And here I'm actually cutting that groove that I'm going to fill up with joint filler. And here is the joint filler being prepared. I like to prepare my own because I think it's stronger than the pre-made wet version. And this is just a matter of putting it onto the wall with your knife. And here you see the final result of the drywall being plastered up. This is the back wall and the chimney, and that one we have kept original and corrected where necessary and filled up some extra plaster on it. Now, once my joint filler was dried up, I sanded everything down, and I placed a complete coat all over the wall of joint finisher, and I started to sand it down with a grit of 220 to have a very smooth finish. And while all this was drying, I prepared the wings of the window in this paint booth, and I sprayed a coat of varnish on it, and I think I did about 4 coats. And now it was time to install the glazing. So I trial fitted the glazing first into the frames, and then it was time actually to put them into place. Now I had spacers already set up, and here I'm actually putting the glass into the wing of the window, and I'm finishing it off with some Tech 7. So this is kind of a seal, and here I'm installing the small wood with some special double-headed nails, so I can remove it at any given time to clean the windows. And yes, it was time again to drag it all upstairs. And believe me, these little wings, they were pretty heavy, especially the glass made it heavy. And if you work on your own, these things may not be all that easy. And here I'm preparing some locks for the windows, and these are very simple locks. It's just some metal bars that I can rotate to keep the windows closed. And very soon the windows got tested, because I live in Belgium and it rains a lot. And this is how it looks like from the outside. We've got those window frames in place together with the wings. So now it was time to plaster them in. So on the walls, I did measure the humidity, but before doing so, I was installing some electrical cabling, and I'm using flex tubes that are pre-wired, and I'm always using 2.5 square millimeters. Now putting these sockets into the wall, they do require an extra support, and that's what I was using that piece of wood behind it. So otherwise you can't really keep those sockets into the drywall itself. So on the window frames, I installed around it first of all OSB, but I don't go crazy about it because I want to check the humidity first. It doesn't make sense to put OSB onto a wet wall. And I always try to avoid direct contact between the OSB and the wall, and that's why you saw the foam which is sitting in between. And then onto the OSB, we install the drywall again. And here you see me doing that exactly, one of the last pieces. Now for the side, I often do glue my drywall onto the sides, and here you see that foam. You put it on there, you let it sit for a while, and then you push it in place. As this is a very long piece, I'm using an aluminum kind of ruler to make sure that everything is absolutely straight and in place. And you just hold it for a few seconds. Now, drywall has a tendency to chip if you hit the corner. So you have inner and outer corners, and this is a metal protection bar that I always will put up on those corners. So first of all, you put some of your joint filler down, and then you push the bar inside. And then once you're done with that, you all level it up, and you're basically done. And then you have a very solid corner that allows you to bump into it. If you don't do this, it's going to be very hard to get a straight corner. Now, some of the molding on the ceiling was gone, so I made kind of a template, and I pulled with some plaster some new moldings or pieces of the molding just to restore that. I don't like to fake things, but I do restore small things. And here you see me finishing up that
on
upper
the attic.
part around the window frames. So now it was time to install some lights on the attic, and again I'm using this flex tube with pre-wired tubes. It's a very easy way to use it, and I'm also using those quick connect, I don't know what you call them, connectors, I would say. So you just slide in the cable and it's connected, as you see right here. It's very handy and actually very quick as well. And here I'm installing the light switch itself. Again, very quick. Now this is with screws. And then we do our little dry run, everything works fine. And now we could actually continue with the attic. In fact, there's a couple of things we got to do. We have to insulate the sides, the top of the wall, but also we're going to insulate the top of the ceiling or the floor I'm walking on. And for that one, I'm using, first of all, a fleece. Now, I did run out of insulation panels, so I had to get some, and the weather was really, really bad. And here you see the panels on the left, which are on the top of the wall, and then the blue part is where we're going to put even thicker insulation up. This is the insulation then for the actual floor. Here, this is still the top of the wall insulation that I'm putting between the outer side of the wall and the end of the wall, and then we tape everything up with aluminum tape. And here you have the 20 millimeter insulation that we're using for the floor, which is placed on top of this fleece. This work went fairly quick, I have to say, and at the end I taped it all up, and the good thing is you can even walk on it. I wouldn't say you walk on it with high heels, but with boots on, you can walk on it. And that was done. And we just got a lot of debris left, which we had to take down. And this is the final result where we are today. So everything is painted for the first time. The floor is cleaned up. The ceiling is cleaned up. We still have to do the plinths, of course, on the side. We still have to install the radiators and the light switches on the wall and the lights. And the lights is going to be the next thing we're going to do. But I think overall, this is looking quite nice and quite original.
So folks, I hope that you enjoyed this flashback on how we restored the tower room and in the condition it is in now. There's more videos coming on how we're going to finish it up, like plinths, like heating system, and the lighting. And the lighting system is going to be something special because we're going to build our own fixtures. And that's going to be the next video on restoring the tower room. Thank you for viewing, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.